Robert Davenport's plan to set me up with his daughter, Chloe, involved spiking our drinks at dinner. A few glasses in, my head was swimming. Before I knew it, a housekeeper was guiding us both into the same bedroom. After that, things became inevitable. The next morning, a sliver of sunlight pierced the gap in the curtains, and Chloe and I woke up at almost the same time. Looking at the tangled sheets and the marks on each other's skin, we both knew exactly what had happened. This had her father's fingerprints all over it. Chloe's first reaction was a wave of shame and anger, her cheeks flushing crimson. But it was her own father's doing, and deep down, she couldn't bring herself to truly hold him accountable. After a long silence, as if she'd made a monumental decision, her tone turned ice cold. She was ready to bury last night. We're both adults, Ethan. It was one night. You're not actually going to get attached, are you? She tried to put on the air of a worldly woman who'd done this a million times, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. What are you really trying to say? I cut straight through her act. Chloe stopped trying to hide. Ignoring the morning light on her bare skin, she slid off the bed, her feet padding silently on the floor as she searched for her scattered lingerie and began to dress. Her voice was as detached as if she were talking about someone else. Last night never happened. I pressed my lips together, saying nothing. Her gaze then fell to the damning spot of red on the sheets, and her voice softened, though it was still laced with distance. For all these years, I've always seen you as a brother. And as you can see, last night, that was my first time. I don't blame my dad for this. Just think of it as a thank you for taking care of me all these years. She wasn't wrong. Ever since I'd come to live with the Davenports, I had looked after her, protecting her at every turn. Partly because she was the family princess, cherished by everyone, and partly because of a not-so-secret crush I'd been nursing for years. I was in love with Chloe Davenport. It started when we were teenagers. Her parents knew, and she, more than anyone, knew it too. But with her next words, she crushed that affection into dust. I have a boyfriend now. His name is Caleb. He's the man I'm going to marry. I'm going to go talk to Dad right now and make it clear. He needs to stop wasting his time trying to force us together. I knew about Caleb. Robert knew about him, too, and he despised the guy. In Robert's eyes, only I was worthy of being his son-in-law. After all, he'd spent years grooming me to one day marry his daughter and take over the business. Now, not only had I carved out a solid position at Davenport Industries, but I was also the key player behind the company's recent rapid expansion. Chloe had just pulled on a form-fitting pencil skirt that hugged her curves. She turned to face me, her tone becoming more urgent. You're 25, Ethan. It's time you found a real girlfriend. Stop wasting your energy on me. As soon as you're with someone, my dad will finally give up on this whole matchmaking fantasy. Her message couldn't have been clearer. Even after what had happened, there was absolutely no future for us. The moment the words left her mouth, she stormed out of the room. A second later, I heard her yelling at her father downstairs. The argument drifted up the stairwell, every word sharp and clear. Dad, you went too far. I've always thought of Ethan as a brother. I don't care what you think or what you do. I will never be with him. Besides, I told you I have a boyfriend. His name is Caleb. Chloe, let me make myself perfectly clear. The only man who will be my son-in-law is Ethan Hayes. That Caleb character is trash, and you need to get rid of him now. Never. I love Caleb, and he's the only one I'll ever marry. Robert was practically fuming, his voice shaking with rage, but he was no match for Chloe's stubborn streak. I stood at the top of the stairs for a while, watching the father-daughter standoff below, when suddenly a switch flipped inside me. The fog that had clouded my mind for years finally cleared. All that time I'd spent obsessing over her. It all just evaporated. It's a big world, full of amazing women. Why was I so fixated on Chloe Davenport? Besides, Robert had recently been diagnosed with a heart condition. If they kept arguing like this, what if he got so worked up that something serious happened? How could I ever live with myself? When I was 12, my parents died in a car crash, leaving me and my grandmother with nothing. When Grandma got seriously ill, it was Robert Davenport who took pity on us. He paid for all her medical bills, moved her into the best assisted living facility in the state, and brought me, a lonely kid, into his home. He gave me a life no different from that of a son born into wealth. For years, he taught me about life, about business, grooming me as if I were his own. To me, he was more than a father figure. He was my father. I couldn't let him risk his health over this fight between me and Chloe. With that thought, I didn't hesitate. I turned and walked down the stairs, striding right up to Robert's side and cutting into their argument. Mr. Davenport, there's something I need to talk to you about. For all these years, I'd called him Mr. Davenport. Today, I wanted to change that. Robert shot Chloe a withering glare, but when he turned to me, his tone softened instantly. What is it, Ethan? I took a deep breath, and then, without a second thought, I dropped to one knee in front of him. He froze. Even Chloe stopped arguing, her eyes wide with shock. I looked up, my gaze steady. Mr. Davenport, thank you for everything you've done for me over the years. But from now on, I don't want to call you Mr. Davenport anymore. Oh, he frowned, not quite understanding. I want to be your son. I met his gaze and finally said the words I'd kept locked away for years. From now on, can I call you Dad? And Mrs. Davenport, Mom? Years ago, he had offered to formally adopt me. I had been tempted, but my crush on Chloe held me back. I was afraid that if I legally became her brother, we could never be together. But now I no longer cared about being with her. All I wanted was to repay the Davenports for their kindness. Robert stared at me for a few seconds before the realization dawned on him. I was giving up on Chloe completely, choosing instead to become a true member of the family as a son. His face was a mixture of sorrow and joy. He sighed and turned to his daughter, a final trace of hope in his voice. Chloe, I'm asking you one last time. Are you absolutely sure you don't want to be with Ethan? Chloe's gaze fell on me, her expression complicated. After a moment of silence, her brow furrowed, and she gave her firm, final answer. I'm sure. Robert looked at her, then back at me kneeling on the floor, and slowly shook his head. He finally saw the truth. One was hell-bent on marrying another man, and the other just wanted to be his son. There was no fate between them. He didn't mention setting us up again. He had a housekeeper bring his wife, Eleanor, downstairs, and the two of them sat side by side on the sofa. When he looked at me, his eyes were filled with pride. Ethan, our family has a tradition for moments like this. It's time for a toast. I stood up. A housekeeper handed me a glass of whiskey, and with steady hands, I presented it respectfully to Robert. My voice caught, but the words were clear. Dad, to you. Robert took the glass, his own hand trembling slightly. Son, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I then took a second glass and offered it to Eleanor, softly saying the word I had wanted to say for years. Mom. Tears instantly welled in her eyes. She took the glass, her voice choked with emotion as she patted the back of my hand. For years, they had treated me like their own son. They deserved to hear those words, and I should have said them long ago. After the toast, it was official. From that moment on, I was their son, and I had a new name for Chloe. Sister. That one word drew a permanent line, defining our relationship as nothing more than family. Oof. Chloe flinched, let out a soft scoff, and then turned and left the house. I watched her go, noticing the slight stiffness in her walk. A flicker of concern went through me. After what had happened last night, she had to be in pain. But the worry lasted only a moment. I looked away, letting the thought go. We were siblings now. She had her own life to live, and I had to keep my distance, no longer doting on her every need as I had before. I didn't leave the mansion right away. When I finally did step outside, I saw that Chloe was still there. She was sitting in her red sports car, her eyes locked on me. She was clearly waiting for me. Guessing she wanted to talk in private, I walked over to the car. The window slid down. Chloe rolled her eyes at me. Don't think that just because you call me sister, it means I actually like you. That's never going to happen. I was genuinely confused. How did calling her my sister translate into me liking her? The logic escaped me. Chloe, that's not what I meant. A sharp scoff cut off my explanation. Listen to me carefully. The person I love is Caleb, she declared. Now, later, and forever. It will only ever be him. With that, she slammed her foot on the gas, and the convertible peeled out, disappearing down the road. I stopped wasting my energy on Chloe. In addition to my regular work, I had to step in for the ailing Robert Davenport, attending events and schmoozing with elites from various companies and families. If I could have, I would have brought Chloe along. After all, The majority of the Davenport Industries stock would one day be hers. But every time I called, it either went straight to voicemail or she'd pick up, snap, don't bother me, and hang up. Knowing her as I did, she was angry, and she was angry at me. As for why, after thinking it over, I figured it had to be because I called her sister that day. But I truly didn't get it. She was the one who didn't want to be with me. Now that I'd backed off and accepted our new relationship as siblings, what was she so mad about? The next afternoon, Eleanor called me in a panic, telling me to come home immediately. She said Chloe had brought her boyfriend home and was in a huge fight with Robert. I rushed back to the mansion. The moment I walked in, I saw Chloe sitting on the living room sofa with some guy. Robert was nowhere in sight. Brother, Chloe called out, her voice deliberately loud. It was the first time she had ever called me that, and it felt strangely awkward. This is Caleb, my boyfriend. The man next to her narrowed his eyes and stood up to greet me first. I gave him a cool nod without saying much. Just then, Eleanor came downstairs and told me Robert was waiting for me in his study. By the time I finished my meeting and came back down, Chloe and Caleb were gone. That afternoon, Robert and Eleanor left for an extended stay at a wellness clinic in Europe. All company matters were left in my hands. The very next day, Chloe brought Caleb to the office. Caleb wants to work here. Find a spot for him, she said, getting straight to the point. Preferably a management position. He was a manager at his last company, so his role here can't be a step down. All right, I nodded. I'll arrange it. As the acting CEO, Chloe was now one of my executive assistants. I headed to the CEO's office. Interestingly, Chloe didn't follow me in, but Caleb did. He walked straight to the large leather chair behind the desk, plopped down, and leaned back with a sigh of satisfaction. Now, this is a nice seat. He even had the audacity to prop his feet up on the mahogany desk. He turned to me, his eyes full of contempt, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I know what you are. You're just the charity case, the adopted son. And I, he preened, am Chloe's boyfriend. To put it bluntly, you work for me and Chloe. A hired hand. And a hired hand should know his place. You work hard, and when I'm officially in this seat, I'll make sure to take care of you. His confidence was certainly something. I didn't waste words on him. I picked up a file from the desk and handed it to him. You'll be the team lead for Project Group 2. This is the file on their new development. I need a full project proposal within a week. Caleb smirked, slowly getting up from the chair. He straightened his designer jacket before taking the file from my hand, acting as if I were his assistant. I paid his little power plays no mind. He was right. I was a hired hand, and a hired hand has to have the right attitude. News of Caleb's appointment to a management position spread through the company like wildfire. Everyone knew he was the boss's daughter's boyfriend, the future son-in-law, so no one dared to cross him. This wasn't just a rumor. Chloe and Caleb were attached at the hip, their relationship obvious to everyone. They even started using the CEO's office, my office, for their dates. As the hired hand, I knew my place. Whenever one of the other assistants told me those two were in there, I made a point to stay away. But one day, an accident was unavoidable. My other assistant was out, and when I pushed open the office door, I walked right in on Chloe and Caleb arguing. Caleb was grabbing her arm, his expression impatient. Chloe, come on, it's the 21st century. You really want to wait until we're married? I only heard a snippet, but I instantly understood. Chloe wanted to wait, to not cross that line before their wedding day. It was a rule her father had set for her. Another was that she had to be home every night. I was surprised she was still following them, especially since she and I had already slept together. Sorry, my mistake. I turned to leave, but Chloe stopped me. Wait, come back. She looked at Caleb, her tone firm. I told you. Nothing is happening before the wedding. Take it or leave it. With that, she walked out. The princess had always had that temper. I was used to it. Chloe, Caleb scrambled after her, trying to explain as he went. It's just because I love you so much, I can't wait to be closer to you. As he passed me, Caleb shot me a look. Seeing that Chloe was already down the hall, he dropped the act. You didn't see anything, he hissed. If you say a word, you'll regret it. I said nothing. He took my silence as agreement and hurried after Chloe. To be honest, I was a little curious. After they left, I closed the door, sat down at the desk, and opened my laptop. There was a discreet security camera in the CEO's office, something only Robert and I knew about. I wanted to see just what they were doing in here if she wasn't letting him touch her. I pulled up the footage and found myself staring. They would spend hours in the office. Most of the time, they just talked. Occasionally, Caleb would put on a little show for her, doing some kind of sultry dance or singing a pop song. A man knows a man. Caleb was always wearing tight clothes and pulling those moves in front of her. He was peacocking, trying to get her to give in and take things to the next level. Buzz. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Chloe. She warned me not to tell anyone about our night together, and especially not to use it to provoke Caleb, or she'd make me pay. I was speechless. First Caleb threatens me, now Chloe. Did they really think I was a pushover? I texted back, turning the threat right back at her. Stay out of the CEO's office on your dates. If you don't, I'll tell your boyfriend everything about that night. A moment later, her reply came, "You're unbelievable." I smiled and left it at that. For the next few days, they didn't use my office for their dates. But Caleb couldn't stay quiet for long. I was out entertaining a client. When I got back to the office, I found my things being cleared out of the CEO's suite. A few members of his project team were carelessly tossing my belongings into cardboard boxes and piling them in the hallway. Caleb stood by, directing them, while Chloe sat on a sofa, presiding over the whole scene. I surveyed the chaos and walked in. "What's going on here?" Caleb smirked, his voice smug. "From now on, this office is mine." He gestured toward Chloe. Chloe has already approved it. Then, his voice dripping with disdain, he added, "Hayes, don't forget your place. Chloe is Robert Davenport's daughter. You're just the adopted son. With Mr. Davenport away, Chloe's in charge. You think you can run the whole show? Not a chance. Me, running the whole show? If Chloe were actually capable of managing this company, did he really think I'd be working myself to the bone?" I looked at Chloe. She avoided my gaze at first, then cleared her throat and puffed out her chest. "Caleb's right. With my dad gone, I'm the one who makes the decisions. Ethan, Caleb likes this office, so you can just find another one. It's not up for discussion." I knew exactly what was happening. Caleb was mad I'd banned him from the office, so he'd whispered poison in Chloe's ear and driven a wedge between us. It was laughable. Did Caleb really think Chloe's title as the boss's daughter was enough to give her control of the company? But this time, I didn't fight back. I calmly walked away from the office and knelt to start packing my things. I wasn't the real CEO anyway. It didn't matter where I worked. But there was one thing they had forgotten. My authority at Davenport Industries didn't come from being the adopted son. It came from my ability to get things done. The kind of person who can close $1 billion deal has a certain understanding of human nature, a knack for strategy that's practically ingrained. "Ethan, let me help you." My assistant, Sophie Chun, knelt beside me, her nimble fingers taking a stack of files from my hands. She'd been my junior in college and had followed me to Davenport Industries after graduation. That was 3 years ago. "Thanks, Sophie." I took the box she handed me. My fingers brushed against the back of her cool hand, and I quickly pulled away, under the pitying and gossiping stares of our colleagues. Sophie and I carried our boxes and made a rather undignified exit from the executive floor. We found an empty office on a lower level and set it up as our new base of operations. The next blow came swiftly. The very next morning, Caleb and Chloe barged into our new office. Caleb got straight to the point. "Hayes, you're off the Skyline Gardens project. I'm taking over." His tone was arrogant, leaving no room for argument. I tightened my grip on my pen. The Skyline Gardens was a $5 billion investment. If it failed, it could sever the company's entire cash flow. If it succeeded, it would mean billions in profit. It was the single most important project of the year. Before I could speak, Chloe chimed in. "Do what he says. Give him the project proposal." "Chloe," I said, looking up at her, my voice low and serious. "This is a $5 billion project, the lifeblood of this company. Are you sure you want to hand it over to an outsider?" "Chloe and I are a couple." Caleb exploded. "You're the adopted son. Technically, you're the outsider." I ignored his outburst, my eyes fixed on Chloe. After a long moment, she looked away. "Give it to him," she mumbled. "I trust Caleb. I know he'll do a great job." Blinded by love, I thought with a cold, internal laugh, but my face remained impassive. "Fine." I turned and told Sophie to give Caleb the project binder and all related materials. As I watched them leave, triumphant, Sophie was so frustrated she was practically stamping her foot. Ethan, Mr. Davenport put you in charge of this. Caleb couldn't even write a decent proposal last time. How can you give him a project this massive? I held up a hand to calm her, my voice even, but with a hidden edge. It's fine. Let him do it. How else is he going to show his true colors? Sophie was sharp. Her eyes lit up as she caught my meaning. You have a plan, don't you? I just gave her a mysterious smile and said no more. Things were quiet for a couple of weeks, until an unexpected event changed everything. Sophie and I started dating. I was passing by the front of our building when I saw a guy harassing her. I quickly got out of my car and pretended to be her boyfriend to get him to back off. But the guy wouldn't give up. You're a boyfriend? Prove it. You want proof. Sophie's eyes suddenly glistened with tears. She stood on her toes, and her cool lips brushed against mine in a fleeting kiss. She turned to glare at the guy, her voice trembling with anger. Are you satisfied now? The guy stared for a few seconds, his own eyes welling up before he turned and ran. You didn't have to do that. We could have called security, I said, handing her a tissue, my own heart still racing. Sophie just gave me a playful smile, touching her fingertips to her lips. It's fine. It was you I kissed. No complaints here. Her words sent ripples through me. We'd known each other for 5 years, worked together for 3. She'd always hidden her feelings well, but I should have seen it. She always remembered I hated cilantro, remember my birthday, and kept every file perfectly organized. Before, my vision was clouded by my obsession with Chloe. But looking at Sophie now, without that filter, I saw her clearly. She was graceful but capable, intelligent but modest. She never dressed flashy, and every dollar she earned was carefully planned out. She was just a genuinely good person. It turned out there was a hidden gem right beside me all along. Chloe had told me I was 25 and needed to find a girlfriend. Now, I realized she was right. I took a deep breath, looked into Sophie's bright eyes, and said, Sophie, will you go out with me? She froze for a few seconds before the words registered. Her voice trembled. Ethan, did you just ask me to be your girlfriend? I did. I nodded, watching as her eyes immediately filled with tears. The next second, she threw herself into my arms, burying her face in my chest. Ethan, I've waited for you for so long. You finally see me. I held her tight and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. I'm sorry it took me so long, I whispered. That weekend, I took Sophie to the assisted living facility to visit my grandmother. My grandma was overjoyed to finally meet my girlfriend, holding both our hands and asking when we planned on getting married. I smiled at her. Soon, Grandma. Very soon. On the drive back, Sophie sat in the passenger seat, practically bouncing with excitement. So, if we're telling her it's soon, we should probably have a date in mind, right? I glanced over at her from the driver's seat and smiled. When do you want to get married? As soon as possible, of course. Her eyes were sparkling with anticipation. As soon as possible. I repeated softly, then grinned. Well, that depends on getting your parents' approval, doesn't it? Yes. Sophie nodded emphatically. They'll love you, I promise. The next day, I went with Sophie to her parents' house. They were both kind, gentle people, both teachers. They didn't pry too much into my background, and after a short conversation, gave us their enthusiastic blessing. Things between us were moving at lightning speed. When I got back to the Davenport mansion that evening, I found Chloe on the sofa, her brow furrowed in thought. You're back, she said, breaking the silence. Her voice was quieter than usual. Yeah, I nodded, planning to head straight upstairs, but she stopped me. Sit down. We need to talk. I did as she asked, curious to hear what was on her mind. You've been getting too close to Sophie. People at the office are starting to talk. Her tone was laced with obvious disapproval. They're right, I admitted freely. There is something between us. What's that supposed to mean? Chloe's brow snapped together as she pressed for more. We're dating. The words were barely out of my mouth before her voice shot up. No, you can't be with her. Why not? I countered. Chloe's eyes darted away. She hesitated before mumbling. I don't approve. With that, she stood up and hurried upstairs, leaving me with no chance to ask anything else. I stood there, completely baffled by what new drama she was stirring up. What was even more shocking was what happened that night. Chloe snuck into my room. She lifted the corner of my comforter, slipped into my bed, and pressed her body against mine. Chloe. I woke with a start, the familiar scent of her peach blossom perfume filling the air. I knew it was her without even looking. What the hell are you doing? I pushed her away in the darkness, utterly confused. Ethan. Her voice was unnaturally soft as she lunged for me again, pressing her face against my chest. Her words came out in a desperate rush. Break up with Sophie. If you need a woman, you can just come to me anytime. I didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. I pushed her away again. Chloe, are you serious? What about Caleb? Isn't he the one you love? I couldn't understand it. She was supposedly in love with Caleb. So why was she doing this? Did she have no respect for her own relationship? Chloe stammered, unable to come up with a coherent reason. Finally, just repeating stubbornly, you just can't be with Sophie. Then, she reached over and switched on the bedside lamp. In the warm, yellow light, I saw that she had taken off her clothes. She was completely naked. Before I could look away, she grabbed her phone and started snapping pictures of us. The compromising position, her naked body pressed against me. If those photos got out, anyone would jump to the wrong conclusion. Chloe, what are you doing? I instantly realized her plan and lunged for the phone, trying to delete the pictures. But she was calm, a smug look on her face. My phone is synced to the cloud. The photos are already backed up. You can't delete them. My temples throbbed with anger. Chloe, what is your problem? She had made it clear she didn't want me, but the moment I started dating someone else, she pulls a stunt like this? I just want you to stay away from your assistant, she repeated, still refusing to give me a real reason. I didn't have to wait long for the answer. The next morning, one of the housekeepers was spraying her usual light perfume when Chloe suddenly covered her mouth, gagging repeatedly, though nothing came up. The housekeeper backed away in fear. Miss Chloe, it's just my perfume. There's no other smell. Just don't wear it anymore. Chloe waved her off and retreated to her room. I watched her go, my brow furrowing. That housekeeper had worn the same perfume for years, and it had never bothered Chloe before. What was different today? I delayed my trip to the office. When I was sure Chloe was gone, I snuck into her room. In the bathroom trash can, I found the truth. A used pregnancy test, displaying 2 clear red lines. At the office, I found Chloe, my face grim. You're pregnant, I said, stating it as a fact. Her face went pale. After a few seconds of silence, she finally nodded. Yes. I pointed to myself, my heart sinking. Is the baby mine? I already knew the answer. We'd had that one night, with no protection. Combined with her bizarre behavior lately, the conclusion was obvious. Yes, you're the only one I've been with. Caleb has never touched me, she said, her hand drifting to her stomach. I've been feeling off for a few days, so I went to the doctor. I found out I'm over a month along. Do you want to keep it? I asked. If she didn't, she could have just had an abortion without all this drama. Her voice cracked, on the verge of breaking down. It's not that I wanted. The doctor said my condition is complicated. If I terminate this pregnancy, I might never be able to have children again. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Chloe loved Caleb. I was with Sophie. But now, Chloe was carrying my child. A child that might be the only one she could ever have. The separate paths our lives were taking had just been violently tangled back together. What do you want to do? I asked after a long silence. She just shook her head, her voice lost. I don't know. I really don't know. I could understand. She had a boyfriend, but was pregnant with another man's baby. Anyone would be overwhelmed. I thought for a long time before making a decision. I looked at her and said seriously, Chloe, if you decide to keep the baby, I'll help you raise it. The Davenports had more than enough money, so she didn't need my financial support, but I had to make my position clear. I was acknowledging my role as the father and my willingness to be in the child's life, but only on my terms. But I can't marry you, I stated plainly. I'm with Sophie, and I'm going to marry her. Chloe's eyes flashed with anger. No, you have to break up with Sophie right now. If you don't, I'll send her the pictures from last night, and I'll tell her I'm pregnant with your child. My own face hardened. Go ahead. Do it. I'll tell Sophie the entire story from beginning to end. Seeing I wouldn't budge, Chloe glared at me, grinding her teeth in frustration. That afternoon, I met Sophie and told her everything. She listened with a heavy expression. After a long silence, she asked quietly, Are you trying to get me to break up with you? She had misunderstood. I shook my head quickly. No, That's not it at all. I just wanted you to know everything, so you're prepared. I paused, then added gently, of course, I'll respect your decision. Chloe and I are going to be connected because of this. If you want to walk away now, I'll understand. Sophie bit her lip, her eyes filled with conflict, but her voice was firm when she spoke. I don't want to walk away. I knew how hard this must be for her. The fact that Chloe was carrying my child was a slap in the face. But in the end, she chose to face it with me. Meanwhile, I was shocked to learn that Chloe had also confessed to Caleb. Even more surprising was his reaction. Instead of blaming her, he took her hands and said with deep emotion, Chloe, it was just an accident. I love you, and I'm with you through this. You have this baby, and I'll raise it as my own. Chloe was so moved, she burst into tears and threw herself into his arms. It seemed like both of our partners were okay with the situation. For a moment, it looked like we might actually get a happily ever after. But a few days later, everything changed. Chloe told me everything. Caleb cornered me in the hallway at work, his voice dripping with provocation. So what if you two have a kid together? I'm still going to be the one who marries into the Davenport family. I had to admit, I was almost impressed by his generosity. After Sophie and I were married, any kids we had wouldn't have much friction with Chloe's child. But Caleb was in a different boat. He had to watch his girlfriend carry another man's baby and then wait for her to give birth. Most men couldn't handle that. It really seemed like he was deeply in love with Chloe. That evening, Chloe mimicked Caleb's move and intercepted me at the front door of the mansion. She rested a hand on her stomach, a triumphant look on her face. You don't want to be this baby's father, but someone else does. I told Caleb everything. Unlike you, he said he'll accept this child and take good care of both of us. Not like someone else, who chased me for years but abandons his own child to be with another woman. But it doesn't matter now. I don't need you anymore. Even if you came crawling back, it's too late. The two of them were perfectly in sync, one ambushing me during the day, the other at night. A real power couple. A few days later, however, the devoted couple's relationship imploded. Someone in the company had filed an anonymous complaint, claiming Caleb was having inappropriate relationships with other female employees. The proof was sent directly to Chloe. Shaking with rage, Chloe had it investigated and discovered that not only was Caleb cheating, but he was doing it with multiple women. Worse, he was colluding with them to embezzle millions in project funds from the company. Liar. Caleb, you're a damn liar. Clutching a thick file of evidence, Chloe kicked open the door to Caleb's office and found him getting intimate with another woman. The scene only fueled her fury. She threw the file at his face. Embezzling company funds and sleeping with half the office. Is this what you call being in love with me? Caleb panicked. He pushed the woman off him, scrambled to pull up his pants, and dropped to his knees. Chloe, listen, I can explain. It's, he stammered, then suddenly turned the blame on her. It's you. This is all your fault. Me? Chloe was stunned. Yes, you. Caleb latched onto the excuse like a lifeline. You never let me touch you before, and now that you're pregnant, you want me to keep my hands off you even more. I'm a normal guy. I have needs. If you won't satisfy them, I have to find someone who will. It was a clever excuse, but Chloe, who had been spoiled her whole life, had a notoriously short temper. She wasn't buying it. If you truly love someone, you can wait, she shot back. Ethan was in love with me for years, and he waited. He turned down so many other girls for me. Caleb, don't think I'm stupid. I know you were embezzling money because you were planning on dumping me and skipping the country, right? Do I look like a 3-year-old? Am I that easy to fool? I've already called the police. You can save your excuses for them. Several large security guards stood behind her. At her signal, they surged forward and restrained Caleb. Seeing that he couldn't talk his way out of it, Caleb dropped the act. His face twisted into a sneer of pure contempt. He had nothing left to lose. Whatever, Chloe. Did you really think I put up with your spoiled brat attitude because I liked you? It's because you were born with a silver spoon. You're a Davenport. And on top of that, you're pregnant with another man's kid, and you actually thought I was going to be your loyal little doormat. That's hilarious. You should take a good look in the mirror. Shut up. Chloe was trembling with rage. She yelled to the guards, "Gag him." A guard immediately stuffed a rag in Caleb's mouth, silencing him just as the authorities arrived. The once perfect couple had finally torn each other apart in the ugliest way possible. I watched the whole scene unfold from outside the office door, then turned and walked away. Chloe didn't know that the anonymous tip had come from me. Nothing happened in this company without my knowledge, especially not in an office fitted with a hidden camera. I had seen it all. Him flirting with other women, making calls to offshore accounts to transfer the money. He thought he could use Chloe to marry into the family, while simultaneously draining the company's funds. He was hopelessly naive. I had already made arrangements with my contacts overseas. Not only would Kayla be arrested, but the embezzled funds would be frozen and returned to the company's accounts within weeks. All his careful scheming was for nothing. I owed the Davenports my life. And besides, Chloe was carrying my child. I would never stand by and watch someone like Caleb destroy her and her family's legacy. In the aftermath, I pretended to know nothing about it, and I prepared myself for the inevitable blowback from Chloe. Sure enough, with Caleb gone, she turned her frustrations back on me. She even called Eleanor and complained that I was being irresponsible. But my position never changed. I would acknowledge the child, but I was going to marry Sophie. 2 years later, at my wedding to Sophie, Chloe stood in the crowd, holding our 1-year-old son. She stared at me, her eyes burning with an intensity that could have incinerated me on the spot. She looked at me like I was the worst kind of deadbeat. I felt her gaze and turned to look at her. I offered a gentle smile to the child in her arms. Then I turned back to my bride, took her hand, and continued with our vows. Epilogue. I was Chloe Davenport. When I woke up, I was 18 again. Instinctively, I looked behind me and saw him. Ethan, just like in my memories, he was walking silently behind me. A wave of overwhelming joy washed over me, and I ran toward him. This time, I swore I would cherish him. I would never let him go. We would be together forever. But just as I got close, he took a deliberate step back. I saw the unmistakable distance in his eyes, and my heart sank. In that single, gut-wrenching moment, I realized it. He had come back with me. He had his memories, too. Fat snowflakes began to drift down from the gray sky, quickly dusting our hair. I knew that with his memories intact, he would find Sophie again. He would still marry her. Even with a second chance, I couldn't be with him. Tears streamed down my face. I held out my hand, catching a delicate snowflake. Ethan, it's snowing, I whispered. If we get covered by the same snow, maybe that counts as growing old together, right? He reached out and gently wiped a tear from my cheek. Yeah, he said softly, it counts.